Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, authentically connect with others by first connecting with yourself and your motives. If I ask you why we communicate with others, what would your reply be? I think my mind initially went to, well, we're sharing information. But as you're soon going to hear, my guest cites that only 15 to 18% of our daily communications are about mere information. What's the primary reason we communicate then? Well, we communicate to, as he says, connect with others. So my interest then is considering how much of my communication actually results and is even focused on true connection. I have a world expert with us today, Charles Duhigg. Charles is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and the author of The Power of Habit, which spent over 3 years on the bestseller list, sold 3 million copies or more. It is my favorite book on habits. That's how I first got introduced to Charles. So when they came to me with his next book, I was all in. And that was February of 2024. I had him here on the show for the first time to talk about his then new book, Supercommunicators, How to Unlock the Secret Language of Connection. That book has already sold 1 million copies, and I brought him back on to talk further about my own evolution and connecting even since then, and to celebrate the release of the paperback version of Supercommunicators, and it's been published in I don't know how many different languages already. Charles, you may know, also writes for the New Yorker magazine. He previously wrote for the New York Times. He's a graduate of Yale University and Harvard Business School. You can find him at Charles Duhigg, Duhigg.com. All right. Well, coming up next, my talk with Charles, who I just so connect with and resonate with, and talking about how we can, with our communication, do more than just communicate, but actively, authentically connect with others. And first, really, you'll hear us talking in just a second, connecting with ourselves and checking out what our motives are. Let's evolve ourselves. Charles, congrats on the paperback of the book coming out. I had you on February of 2024. The book came out in March. From what I've seen, it's sold now over 1 million copies. Is that right?
Yeah, which is great. It's done really well.
It's exceptional because it's a message that I'm proud to have out there that I need as well. So it's here. We're talking again. When I put this out, I'll source our original discussion. And I want to talk with you. So we've talked about super communicators, but I want to talk about your own evolution and some of my own thoughts that have really evolved since that, whatever, 1.5 years ago. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first off, just on the personal side, last time we talked, you're doing a decent amount of surfing. How's that going?
It's good. It's it hasn't, I haven't been in the water lately, but I'm hoping that, I think, as we get into winter, it's always the waves get better. So we'll hopefully have some nice surfing days coming up.
All right. How about the running? How's that going?
It's good. It's good. I've been traveling a lot. And so as a result, when I travel, it's much harder to run. As you know, but I've been actually doing more weights than running, just because that's easier in like the hotel gym, but It's going well. It's going well. How about you? How's life on your end?
It has just continued to evolve. One of the things that I was looking back at the notes, and you had talked about you talked about meditating and working with a breath coach. And I would say since we talked last, my self-awareness, my ability to be present I want to say it's increased, but I almost at this point, I've gotten so far, I wonder if it ever existed. So now it exists. And as I'm tuning into you on communication, I'm thinking, well, no, not on communication, really on connection. I think my ability to connect and feel connected has skyrocketed.
That's interesting. And what do you think is the cause for that? Like, what's the driver that's made that easier and more natural for you?
Well, unless the show is going to be about me, we'll have to talk on another time. I've had a big bunch of changes, transitions in personal life that really here's the short answer, deconstructed my identity, showed me what I was leaning on to support my identity. And in deconstructing that and let me just say freeing myself in that way, I'm able to now come to life a lot more present, a lot more secure, a lot less needy. And in that, to be aware of communicating and tune into actual connection. So I feel like I'm able to engage with your message so much more as of this recording in November 2025 as I was back in February 2024.
Oh, it's great to hear. It's really, and I will say, I think I think a lot of people have this experience where something happens in their life that's destabilizing, that shakes them up, that oftentimes involves like, heartbreak or thoughts of mortality. And one of the things that they sort of learn through that is how valuable it is to have these real connections with other people, which of course are created and maintained through communication. That when you have someone you can turn to say, look, let me tell you what I'm going through. Like, can I just talk it through with you? That makes us feel so much better, right? And in fact, our brains are kind of designed to do that. We've evolved to have a pro-social instinct that ties a lot of our happiness to how much we're interacting with other people, how close we feel to other people, how much we feel like we can trust them and they trust us. And so it's very, very natural to, particularly during periods of instability, to turn to communication and connection, because it is one of the few things that actually helps us a lot. It's the thing that makes us kind of human, right?
I was thinking, Charles, about your book, Supercommunicators. Great name, totally in support of the name. And yet to me, it's kind of that's the face of super connectors.
Yeah.
And that at the end of it. So one of the topics that, even as I was reviewing some of the notes, connecting, let's say connecting is a primary focus for me. And really looking at what's my motive? What's the motive? Why are we sitting here talking right now? I mean, obviously it's for a podcast, but I can talk to a lot of people. Why am I having you on the show? Because I mean, for honesty, it's not like you're going to be on a ton of shows. You're not going to go and promote every one of these. I'm doing this. Why? Because I care about the message. So this is, I would fly out to talk with you just one-on-one, without doing a show. I'm so grateful people want to hear me talk about what I'm personally interested in. But the point is to connect. And man, that wasn't always my point. A lot of times it was, let's do a good show. Really, insightful questions, high energy, whatnot. And I don't care anymore if we can't connect. And if I don't walk away having learned something.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that you're getting at here is that every time we have a conversation, we have a goal, whether we're aware of it or not. Right. Mm-hmm. And researchers, when they look at this, they refer to this as the quiet negotiation that happens at the beginning of a conversation, where one of the things that's happening is that in a quiet negotiation, the goal in a quiet negotiation is not for me to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong or win something from you. The goal in a quiet negotiation is for both of us to be able to explain what we want or what we need. And so part of that quiet negotiation is about the rules, right? Rules of a conversation. In this conversation, for instance, one of the rules is that we're not interrupting each other. We're not speaking over each other, right? We're kind of taking turns. And that's a pretty simple rule, but it's a rule that we didn't even have to acknowledge, but it's a rule, right? And so when a conversation starts, one of the things that we're doing is we're establishing those rules. But the other thing that we're doing is we're trying to announce our own why I'm having this conversation, and figure out what the other person's why is, right? Like, why are they opening their mouth? What do they want out of this? Oftentimes we might not know because we just haven't thought about it. And so it's a real gift to sort of elucidate that from someone. And sometimes the why is just like, I like this guy. I want to make him laugh, or I just want to catch up with him and hear what's going on in his world. Right. Or it's, look, I want to figure out where to go on vacation next month. And I'm hoping that me and my wife can have a conversation and we can figure out kind of what we can afford and where we should go. When we're very deliberate about understanding our own why, which only takes 3 or 4 seconds to figure out. Right. And when we're deliberate about asking the other person for their why are you having this conversation? What's your goal here? What we're doing is we're making that conversation much better, because oftentimes simply illuminating what is at the core, what is the driving motivation for the conversation, helps us get to that topic much, much faster.
Okay, question for you. How much on a daily average, and you could just ballpark it unless you happen to have actually done the studies, how much of the information that we are communicating in a given day is purely exchanging needed information? Hey, what time's the kids' basketball game? Hey,
Right.
where's this? What time's the meeting? And blah, blah, blah. Just basic stuff. There's not any big agenda other than just that stuff that a robot could actually do, something that could be a quick text versus.
Yes. So I think this gets to often a misconception about communication. We think that communication evolved as an information transmission device, and that's not actually true. Communication is really good for information transmission, but that's like a side benefit. That's like something that it turned out we were lucky that it was good at two things. Because the reason why communication emerged is not to share information. It is to feel connected to other people, right? So I mentioned that as humans, our brains have evolved to give us a pro-social instinct. That basically there's neurology within our brains that pushes us to connect with other people, to be able to communicate with them, to coordinate with them, because that helps us live better, right? People who can build families and build villages and work within companies, those are people who tend to be more successful. And so there's an adaptive aspect to communication. But what's important about it is not the information coordinating part, it's the I can trust you part. I feel like your welfare matters to me, and I feel like my welfare matters to you. That's the thing that allows people to come together and form a community and therefore succeed. So there's stuff in your brain that's pushing you to connect with and communicate with other people. Now, the question you had asked is how many of our conversations are just purely informational? Because you're right, there are some conversations that are just informational, right? Like I call up my wife and I ask her, what time is dinner tonight? And she tells me, and I'm like, okay, thanks. What we've found is that at most about 15 to 18% of the act of communication is focused on that information. Because when I call my wife and I say, hey, what time is dinner tonight? And she says 8:30. I don't just hang up the phone, right? I say, oh, okay, thanks. Thanks so much. Love you. Talk to you tonight. It's great to hope you're having a good day, right? We're still doing this non-informational part of the communication. And that's because that is actually the main job of communication, is to make us feel closer to each other and to service this pro-social instinct that all of us have evolved into our brains.
Well, thanks. That's exactly what I was fishing for, is how much we probably had the myth of thinking we're just exchanging information, and how seldom that's the case. So if the majority of every communication that I put out, verbally, text, email, whatever it is, voice messages, is really to connect, what's I think really I've enamored myself with, Charles, is how selfish it generally is. I usually have an agenda, and can I be aware of that agenda? Am I trying to convince somebody of something? Am I trying to just get validation? Do I just want somebody's attention? How much is my need? And I have this little practice now of going, before any communication or in response, how would secure Kevin respond? If I needed nothing emotionally, if my self-image didn't need anything, my identity didn't need a bolster, I'm totally self-contained in instance, how would I respond? And what blew me away is how often the response was different then.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. How self-focused.
Because probably your response is more focused on the other person, right? Your response is focused on, I want to understand you. I want to understand how you see the world. I want to speak in such a way that you can understand me, right? Not that I'm trying to prove something to you, but I want to speak in a way that when my words hit your brain, that you're welcoming them and you want to understand how I see the world. So I think that's again, when we think about prosociality, what's important about it is that prosociality is something that occurs with other people. Like we can't get the dopamine hit. We can't get the reward sensation that prosociality delivers by interacting with someone who who doesn't exist. Right? This is one of the things that we found about conversations with AI. People do have relationships with AI. They feel like, but they're not actually conversations, and they're not, and it's parasocial, but it's not prosocial, because part of being in a conversation is not only listening to you, but it's giving you something. It's giving you a gift. It's believing that when I give you a gift, whether it be my attention or whether it be words, the kind words I give you or anything at all, that when I give you that gift, I feel that you have received it and have at least a little bit appreciated it. And when people understand how AI works, it removes that element of the conversation. There's a lot of taking. There's a lot of like, you're telling me the good things, you're making me feel good about myself. But when I try and make you feel good about yourself, unless I believe that you actually feel good about yourself, it doesn't activate that pro-social instinct. It does not feel like a real conversation.
Thanks. I hadn't thought about it in this vein, Charles, but as you were talking about that, I thought it's kind of like the difference between your wife and a prostitute. Your wife's going to be real with you, and it's going to be some equality here. A prostitute's just going to give you what you want. That's what you're paying them for. AI, I feel like when I
don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time with prostitutes, so but
fair enough. I haven't either, thank goodness. But that's my understanding. You're paying them to get what you want. I'm paying to get. I've had therapists who I've paid, and I finally said, "Look, I'm not here to be coddled. I'm not here to be catered to. I'm here to be fixed. Tell me what to do." I want AI to do that. And sometimes when you get the response, it goes, "That's a brilliant point, Kevin." Well, you're a robot in essence. That's not what I'm here for.
It's not right. I think that there's something important about connecting with another person, and we've all felt this, right? Everyone listening to this has had a conversation with someone and they felt so close to that person afterwards. They felt so good after that discussion. Like there was something about that discussion that just made them feel great. And what's interesting is if we went and we looked at the transcript of that discussion, it would be hard to figure out exactly which was the thing that made them feel great. Because most good conversations are a mess when you put them on paper. Right? You have people interrupting each other. You have people starting an idea and then kind of like jumping to another idea halfway through, and they never finish the first idea. And there's tangents. Good conversations are messy because it's not about an exchange of well put together paragraphs. It's about an exchange of energy and of emotion and of affection for each other. And that's the thing that makes us feel good during a discussion.
Okay, that word affection. So I was thinking a minute ago, you talked about, can I trust you? That feeling, can I trust you? And you actually use the words, am I interested in your welfare? Are you interested in mine? That feels sobering to me to ask. I mean, am I here right now, Charles, with your welfare in mind, or am I here again to try to put on a good show, to try to have a brilliant conversation, to try to get
but those aren't mutually exclusive, and we tend to put a little bit too much. We ask this word trust and affection and well-being to do a little bit too much work. So the kind of trust that is needed, that a pro-social instinct encourages and that is needed, it's not like I need to trust that I can give you money and that you're going to pay it back, right? It could simply be trust that like I might tell you something and you're not immediately going to use that to make me feel stupid, right? Like, oh, that's what you believe? That's the dumbest thing ever, right? So there's a baseline of trust that allows us to communicate and to coexist. The same is true of caring about each other's well-being. So if your goal is to have a good show and to have to ask brilliant questions, that's not mutually exclusive with caring about my well-being, right? The reason I'm here is also to have a good show. And it's to ask questions and to answer brilliant questions. And so it's not as if like we have to maximize trust and we have to maximize caring about someone else's well-being. It's that in many ways we have to do at least the bare minimum, the minimum sufficient. Think about like when you go talk to someone and they're just like needlessly rude to you, right? Like what they're doing there is they're basically saying, you can't trust me. And as a result, not only do we get pissed off at them, we certainly don't want to talk to them. Like basically we'll be like, okay, I'm just going to go talk to someone else at the supermarket because like you seem like you've got some personal problems, right? So the reason why that happens is because the bare minimum of trust has been violated. Yeah. It's not about maximizing welfare. It's not about maximizing trust. It's about creating the bare minimum. And then from there you can build up. but it's the bare minimum that allows us to connect.
Okay, talk to me about that on trust. You talk in the book about beliefs, and I have found myself using the word agenda and bias. Bias more than agenda, of going when we talk, and especially if we're talking about an issue, a topic, especially in a more intimate relationship, whether that's a business partner, a spouse, a kid, whatever. I struggle with feeling that it's possible to much of any degree to come to it. We both go, we'd be better off to say, look, we have a bias. Can we just know that we have a bias and admit it? And so if you ask me what my perspective on X, can I say, well, this is what I want to be true. Right. So let's just get that on the table before we start talking about that. Instead of the dancing that we do, and you can hear the polarizing that happens automatically often.
Well, give me an example. Like, what's a conversation you've had in the last 6 months where this thing kind of came into your head?
Last night.
Okay.
I'm on a 3-day fast right now, just at the end of a 3-day fast.
Okay.
So I made dinner for my kids, and I'm not eating, and so it came up, and we watched something, and then a friend sent me a video on a 72-hour fast. So I said, hey, my son Dakota, I said, hey, check this out with me. And he said, we watched it, and he right away had some counter information to it. And I said, whoa, stop. Right there. Are you feeling like I'm trying to push this on you, and you're trying to come back and, contradict it right off the bat? Because I feel contradiction right off the bat. And he stopped, and he said, well, yeah. I said, well, gosh, I'm sorry that you felt like I was just trying to share it with you, but am I advocating it? Shoot, I probably am. And it was like, let's get honest real quick otherwise we just entered to it, and it would have been a debate back and forth. And when we got that on the table, that, I guess the only reason I would share this is because I'm kind of advocating, and you feel right immediately some pressure. So you came right at the beginning with some counter constructs, to this premise. And otherwise, how long would we have gone on convincing? Does that make,
right.
Does that
Yeah,
relate?
No, that makes total sense. And what you're engaging in there is what's known as meta conversation, right? So you're kind of having a conversation about the conversation. Like
yes.
What, as we mentioned before, like, what is your goal? Like, why are you saying this thing? Why are you saying that thing? Now, my guess is that how old is your kid?
15.
15. Okay. My guess is if I was talking to your 15-year-old and we got a little bit deeper, we'd find all kinds of things going on, right? Like, my dad is like doing this crazy 72-hour fast, and I'm kind of worried about him because like it doesn't seem like you shouldn't eat for 72 hours. Like they've told me that I should eat at least once a day, right? There's probably like some concern. There's probably also the desire to separate himself from you because he's 15 years old. And when we're teenagers, it's a very natural instinct to try and delineate where our parents end and we begin. There's a lot of stuff going on in that conversation, right? And I think you're right that the deeper, more interesting conversation is about like, why did you just do the thing you did? I think last time we talked about deep questions that psychologists kind of divide the world into shallow questions, which are usually just asking people about facts, and deep questions, which is questions that ask us about our values or beliefs or experiences. And that can sound a little bit intimidating to ask someone a deep question, but it's as simple as like if you meet someone who's a doctor, instead of saying, oh, what hospital do you work at? Asking them, oh, why'd you decide to become a doctor? Right? That second question, why'd you decide to become a doctor? That's inviting them to tell you who they are, what they care about, what their experiences have been, what they value. And so I think one of the things that happens is that when we ask deep questions, when we ask questions that start with why, like why dad is fasting for 72 hours so important to you? Like, why not 48? Why not 5 days? Right. And you asking your son, why do you have this instinct to push back? Is it because you think I'm trying to convince you to do this? I think that's when we start having a real conversation, because then we start talking about things that we're experts on. The truth is, neither you nor he are experts on fasting, right? Neither of you have MDs. You don't study it professionally, but you are experts on what you're thinking and feeling. And when we get into a conversation where instead of me trying to prove to you, I know more than you do, I'm more of an expert than you are. When we get into a conversation where it's about both of us sharing our expertise, I'm an expert on how I think and feel, and here's what's happening to me, and here's why I'm doing X. That's when we have a conversation where everyone can fully participate because we're all experts on ourselves.
I love that. We're expert. I just wrote down as I'm taking notes as you talk, I'm an expert on my perspective. That's my primary expertise. So that's the best thing, not the best thing. That's the primary thing I'm going to bring forward here, even if I have some data behind it, because somebody else has countering data probably. Yeah. But what you said a minute ago, meta conversation, a conversation about the conversation reminds me of the referee before a boxing match, and he comes up and then there's some ground rules here. No hitting below the belt, no kicking. I don't really know what they say. And to some degree, they'd like to say, can you just do a good boxing match and be respectful? That's great ground rules. Great. Ground rules.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think meta conversation is actually even a little bit deeper than that, because it is about establishing those ground rules, right? And oftentimes we don't even have to voice them to acknowledge them. But it's also about having this conversation about why we are communicating with each other. So it'd be like the referee coming out and saying, okay, no hitting below the belt. And like, both of you tell me one sentence why you're boxing today, right? Like, why are you here? And what's interesting is that people are going to say different things, right? So, some guys are going to say, there's a $1 million purse and I need the money. Other guys are going to say, I want to prove to myself and everyone else that I'm the strongest person on the circuit, right? People have different motivations for different behaviors. And when we ask them the why question, oftentimes what we're getting at this meta conversation about why we're having a conversation in the first place.
That we've seemed to have this cultural appetite in recent years about being authentic.
Yeah.
That's what I think about when we're having this conversation. The movie, I think it was called Uncharted. They were on a different planet, and on this planet, the thoughts that the men were audibly announced. It's Tom Holland, I think, the famous actor guy. Okay. And interesting thing, because how would that be if every person I came up to before I started talking, the motive was presented here?
Wait, what's the name? Uncharted is the name of the movie?
I think it's Uncharted, Tom Holland. And that's this weird, it's this I don't know if it's dystopian, but they're on another planet.
So other people can hear them? Other people
So as a cute girl comes up, his audible thought is, oh man, she's cute, comes out audibly. He's like, oh, stop it. Don't think about it.
Oh yeah, I just found this. This is very interesting. I'm going to have to watch this. Is it a good movie?
I think so. I enjoyed it. And even more, I just enjoyed contemplating that premise, which is why I'm talking about it here and thinking, if I came up to you and I really have a business idea, and do I want your input? Do I want you to be a participant on the side of formulating it? Do I just need money? I mean, how many different motives? But I'm going to come to coffee with you, trying to hold my cards right and trying to influence you. And you're kind of sitting there going, okay, what's the point? What's he really want?
Right. Yeah.
And we dance around it.
Oftentimes when I come home and I start complaining about my day to my wife, she says, do you want me to like just listen? Do you just need to vent? Or do you want me to help you figure out like a solution to this? And inevitably I say like, no, I just need to get this off my chest. Like, I'm not looking for a solution. I just want you to like tell me that I'm right and they're wrong, and it's all going to work out. So I think that like when we ask and when we announce what we want, it makes those conversations a lot better. Cause you're right. If you go meet with someone about a business idea, they don't know if you're pitching them for an investment, or if you're genuinely asking advice, or if you need to talk it through and you need someone else to be a sounding board. Right? What they're going to do at the beginning of that conversation is they're going to look for clues. So if you come in and you have a deck and you sort of say like, here, let me give you this document.
Yeah.
Part of my brain is going to be like, okay, he's asking for money, right? If you come in and you don't have any of that and you're like, look, this idea is half formed. Can I just tell you about it and see what you think? Then I'm picking up on a clue there, right? We try and pick up on these clues. We try and engage in the meta conversation, whether it's verbalized or not. And the reason why that's important and powerful is because the best communicators are the ones who don't just leave it to like little clues and, chance, but they actually take control of it. And they say, look, the reason I wanted to get together with you is I have this new idea for a company and I'm hoping you might want to invest in it. And if you don't, that's totally fine, because I'd love to just hear your feedback on it as well. Right now, I've laid out my why. And then if I'm really good, I might ask them a question to try and get their why. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. Like, what's the thing that could be most useful for you from this conversation? Right now, I'm asking them for their why. Once we're aligned on that, the conversation is going to go pretty well.
I like the looking for clues and feeling like we so often waste so much time dancing around them instead of just being up front. So again, if I come back and I'm looking and going, okay, if I'm going to take your time, Charles, as I am right now, what is the point here? What is the motive? And can I be upfront about that? Actually, if I think about it beforehand, what I found is sometimes I realize I just have a selfish need. I really don't need to waste that person's time. I really don't need to talk to them.
Yeah, I think it's true.
But again, we just blow into things. I was thinking about you. You talked, I think you've got, speaking engagements you're flying around to and whatnot, that I assume that even if you have somewhat of a canned presentation, that you are making it unique depending on who you're talking to and where. And you're probably running through that in your mind before you get on stage, and you're taking a deep breath and you're being present with yourself and all these things. And yet, why wouldn't I do that with someone I care about or somebody who's important in my life? And I haven't in the past. I just go in and you just kind of wing that sucker.
Well, and in your defense, there's a lot going on, right? Sometimes it's like you got to make dinner for the kids and you're trying to deal with X and you're trying to deal with Y and they have homework. And so it's not unusual to kind of get into autopilot a little bit. And in fact, our brains, just as our brains have a pro-social instinct, there's a part of our brain known as the basal ganglia that exists to create habits. And our brain craves habits because habits are what makes life easier. If we had to decide every time we passed an apple and a rock on the path, which of them to pick up and bite into, we would be exhausted, right? And we would also not be very well fed. So what's important is that our brain seeks ways to conserve energy. Our brains are known as a cognitive miser, that it wants to use as little energy as possible. And habits are one of the ways that we get things done without having to use a lot of decision-making energy powering them. That being said, exactly what you said is right, that oftentimes the way that there's no such thing as a good habit or a bad habit. There's just habits. Our brain exists to create habits. And so we have to decide, is this a habit that I want to indulge? When my kid comes up and they ask me a question, do I answer them on autopilot, or do I create a habit where I take a second, I think about their question, and then I really try and understand what they're asking me and give them an answer that works for them? It's not hard to do, but it does take a little bit of decision. It takes some determination to do it.
All right. We're not allowed to just casually bring up habits without me saying that that's how I knew you before the Supercommunicators book came up. I don't want anyone who's listening to miss that your book, The Power of Habit, is my favorite book on habits.
Oh, thank you.
It's one of those that sits on kind of like my private shelf of books that have influenced my life. So I don't want anybody.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate
talking about habits and not realize the gravity that I give you as an expert on habits. And that's what has changed my communication, Charles, the habits. And it's really the habits I have with myself, really prior and within conversations, even the concept of slowing down. When we talked last, I don't know how long I've been doing it, but when I first started podcasting in earnest, I had a stand-up desk made. So I'm standing up. I wanted the energy, man. I wanted to be, in it. And then I realized it's too much energy. And so I sat down. We literally cut the legs off the desk and put it down. And I sat for a long time. As of right now, I'm on a meditation pillow and working to slow down, because it's the only way I can stay aware and present with you and not just start going on autopilot and talking real fast. And I get emotional and I just start rolling, and it's word salad. And I realized I just took 100 words to say something I could have in 20. And if I'd have done it in 20 more thoughtfully, I would have connected more with you.
Yeah. And you're right. Habits are a huge part of how we communicate. And in fact, our brain is really good at making communication habits. It's actually, it's one of the habits that our brains are best at creating, our communication habits. So oftentimes, if we're trying to work something new into our conversational repertoire, I want to ask more questions, or I want to tell people how I'm feeling more frequently. At first, it feels a little awkward to do that, but it feels very natural very, very quickly. And that's because our brains are so good at creating communication habits, because the basal ganglia exist to create habits. Every animal on earth has a basal ganglia. And because communication is so central to the human experience and what makes humans different from other species, our brains are very, very good at creating communication habits. Again, some of them are good, some of them are bad. There's no such thing as a good habit or a bad habit. There's just the habits that we choose to have and the habits that emerge without our permission that we can change. And so a big part of this is figuring out what are the communication habits that we want to encourage and which are the ones that we want to discourage because we feel like they're not working for us right now.
Reading your book, I'm looking at it initially through the lens of, okay, I want to learn how to communicate better. And so here is this training manual for how to communicate better and thus, to connect with people. I helped myself a lot, Charles, in flipping it around and going, who do I enjoy communicating with and how are they? And I found these are my terminologies. I find them, well, you, I'll just put it on you and own it in the moment. I find you as sitting there as you are, even as I get to see you, see your body language. And I feel like Charles is secure. He's secure with himself. He's secure with this topic. He's not super needy. You're here to help promote the book, but the book's going to sell. It has sold. It's going to keep selling. You're going to be on big shows, and you're not super rushed. You have margin. You've asked me questions back, even though I'm the quote interviewer and whatnot. And I think that's who I want to talk with. Okay, well, how are people experiencing me? Is that what they experience? Or am I trying to get a word in, edgewise constantly? Am I rushed? Am I distracted? Am I looking at my phone? Am I looking elsewhere? Am I talking fast? That's not who I want to connect with. So that's the muse, I guess.
In psychology, in psychology, there's this, this characteristic, self-monitoring. So some people are high self-monitoring, which means they're very aware of themselves, but they're also very aware of how other people are reacting to them. And then there's low self-monitoring, right? When people aren't very aware of what themselves, and more importantly, they don't pay any attention to how other people react to them. What's interesting is that so it's a spectrum from low self-monitoring to high self-monitoring. Being at the extreme end of either spectrum is really dangerous, right? So people who are very low self-monitoring, those are the people that they're so boring because all they want, you have a conversation with them and they just wait for you to ask them questions. And then they only want to talk about the things they're interested in. They never ask you anything about yourself.
I call them tellers. They're just working to tell you and tell you and tell you more and tell you something else and tell you about something else.
Exactly. They're not noticing that you're bored, that you want to talk about something else. But at the other end of that extreme is the high self-monitors. That's also very dangerous. That's usually like a sort of a self-obsessive personality where you're so aware of how the other person is reacting to you that there's very little authenticity in what you're doing. Actors are oftentimes very high self-monitors. And the key is to have elements of both, right? To be someone who pays attention to what you're thinking and feeling, pays attention to how the other person is reacting and what they're thinking and feeling, but not be so slavishly devoted to that it's the only thing that you think about. Because the reason we're having a conversation is because you actually want to learn about me, right? So I need to do a mix of caring and paying attention to you, but also, not necessarily caring about you so much that it prevents me from saying something that's true or honest or meaningful. And so people who tend to balance high self-monitoring and low self-monitoring well are the people that we like to spend the most time around.
Charles, where do you find yourself needing affirmative action in your own communication? Like, where do you find yourself tending to go into a bad habit in your communications that keeps you from connecting, that you've really worked to lift up, support?
Most of it has to do with my kids, because the truth is that talking to your kids can sometimes be boring, right? And you do it a lot. So it's very easy to kind of like be like, I got so many emails to deal with. Like, my 14-year-old is asking me a question and I'm going to kind of answer it out of the corner of my brain while I'm working on this email. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time working on is just making sure that when I'm in a conversation with my kids, that I'm really in that conversation with my kids. I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm showing them, I'm proving to them that I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm sharing things about myself, because one of the reasons they want to have a conversation is they want to feel close to me and they want to learn about me. And so that's probably the place where I spend the most time thinking about engaging in that internal meta conversation about how can this conversation be better.
Well, hey, man, I am so grateful to have you on again to talk about this again.
Thank you.
I want to continue using you as a resource for communicating and thus connecting, because I think I'm communicating less and connecting more. And it's through so much of what you have in this book. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on. This is such a treat for me. I really appreciate
it. Likewise. And I'm honored to go out there and tell people about it too, because it's a message that, speaking of kids, I don't know if there's a better message that my kids could have other than how to communicate in a way that really authentically helps them connect. So, Charles, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Kevin. Excellent.
And hey, I'm so sorry. I keep getting these notes saying that there's an internet issue. So,
oh no, that's fine.
Okay.
It worked. It seemed to work.
Okay.
And I have to jump for this next thing, but thank you so much for having me.
Jump to the next thing. I am going to be following up with you in the next 30 days or so on a project about communication. So
yeah, please do. That'd be wonderful.
All right.
Fantastic. Thanks,
Charles.
Kevin.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us for the conversation. That again, Charles Duhigg, Duhigg. And you can find him and all he does at charlesduhigg.com and find all his social media and whatnot. Just type it anywhere, Charles Duhigg. The book that has been out about a year and a half now, that just came out in paperback because it continues to sell so much, is Supercommunicators: How to Unlock the Secret Language of Connection. Till next time, here's to the evolving you.